What's up, guys? What's going on, man? I'm Paul. This is Pauline Theology's daily devotional, and we are going through the book of John. Glad you're here as we read through and try and gain a greater understanding of who Jesus is. This is all about trusting in Jesus. And what better way to trust in Jesus than to get to his heart? And John, the gospel, is doing that. It's revealing, it's making known the heart of the Father through the person of Jesus. So we're in John chapter 2, verse 1 through 12. And we are going to start into the action of Jesus, start into what is now called the book of the signs. And we are going to see Jesus do things, reveal who he is, show the nature of God and the love and the attributes on display, the glory is for the best word to say. It's probably just going to show the glory of God. And it's going to be revealed through all these things that Jesus is going to do. So if you haven't checked it out yet, go ahead and stop the tape and read 2, 1 through 12. Once you get done reading, come back and we will discuss the 4 questions. If you've already read, then we'll go ahead and jump into it, man. What's John chapter 2? Well, what's happening is this famous story that everybody knows, right? It is the turning water into wine. So we have Jesus. He heads down to Galatia, and he goes to this wedding. Galatia. He goes to Galilee. Sorry, and he goes to this wedding. His mother and him were invited to, and his mom tells him. She says that there is no wine, and then Jesus says, "What does this have to do with us, woman?" You know, and then he says, "My hour has not yet come." So we got to discuss this a little bit because I think people kind of um, wonder what he uses a woman for, especially whenever you're not reading in the NIV. I think in the NIV it says dear woman, my dear woman, or something like that. So what is this in America or in our modern context? When a person says woman, it seems like it's condescending or something like that. And I'm not sure if that's the case in what Jesus is saying. But what it does do is clearly puts some kind of distance between the mother and Jesus. It's could be considered a rebuke. It could be just considered him saying, like, we don't have to worry about this. This is not something that we should worry about. It could be considered like, what's this have to do with me? Like, how am I involved in this situation? Or actually, it could be considered, how are we to have to worry about this situation? Let's put this a little bit into context. Is the reason that this worry may come about is because of a shame honor system, and the husband or the bridegroom is supposed to provide a lavish party for weddings. They say they last, I think, 2 weeks, man. Maybe it could be that long of a party that they throw, that the husband throws as he's getting married. And to run out of wine during this party would be a fatal flaw. I think I've heard in or read about how there were people that got sued from the bride's family. The bride's family sued the husband because they didn't fulfill the duty that he was supposed to fulfill, as to throw a great party for this wedding celebration. So it's a serious offense that this would happen. And so that's why there may be some concern with not having the wine. Well, next question is, what's Mary? Why does she have anything to do with it? So what she says is not a question of asking to do something. It's not really anything but her stating a fact. So we can not jump to assumptions and say that she has some part or role in this wedding festival and takes responsibility. So we can't just say that. It could be Mary just stating a fact, like, hey, they're out of wine. You know, you're like, dang, bro, they out of wine. Son, they out of wine. And then that's maybe an answer to that question, or that statement is Jesus saying, they ain't got nothing to do with us. You know what I'm saying? It could be that. But it also could be that because of the fact that Jesus was invited, Mary was invited. And then we see later on that uh, the sons of Mary or brothers of Jesus were actually there at the wedding, most likely. Then it could be that this is a close relative of Mary. And so she does feel kind of an onus to help this out. So I'm just giving you some things to think about because of the part that Mary may play. But the real thing that's going on here is that there is no wine. That is what's important to the story. But these other things are just conjectures about what could happen. And then next, when he says woman, now it does put some distance between them. As I said before, it could be a rebuke or it could be what is just a technical term, because then it would actually mean more like ma'am. When you say the woman in the Greek, it's just ma'am. But we also don't want to assume it's like here in America, in the southern states, I guess, maybe in the northern, I don't know, but we call our mother ma'am because it's a polite thing to do. That's the thing you're supposed to say. But like I said earlier about the distance that this word brings between the relationship, it's not how they would have used it then. It's a term of courtesy, but not a term of endearment. But we also have to remember that Jesus uses the same word when he talks about John, or I say John, we'll have a discussion on that later on as well. But the disciple that Jesus loves, when he points at it, he says, take care of my mother. He says, woman. And so in that regard, it's not as a word that is used derogatorily or to rebuke, but it is an endearing term, a term to, because at that point in time, it's probably one of the most heart-wrenching moments in the life of Jesus as he's about to die, and he gives the care of his beloved mother over to the disciple. And so this word here isn't how we would think about it, but it does bring distance. And the reason I say it brings some distance between the rights of the mother and Jesus is because he says, my hour has not yet come. And so when he's talking about that hour, this is something that we're going to continue to read about when he says, my hour is not yet come, my hour is not yet come, my hour is not yet come. We're going to continue to read that because this hour is the glorification, spoiler alert, is the glorification of God in Jesus manifested through his life, death, and resurrection, specifically the death and resurrection of Jesus. And so his hour has not yet come. And what also that means is that the hour that comes is an hour that has been designated by the Father. And so it is Jesus who is going to do nothing but the will of the Father. And so when he says, when she says this thing about the wine not being available, that it has ran out, it could be a way of saying that that there is a distinction between the things that I do for you as a mother versus the things that I do because my father has appointed a time for things to happen. And so that distance is becoming from a movement of how he would honor his mother in things to now he has come to a point where his ministry must begin, and that it is his father's will that is above all. So that's some distance that could be placed there as well. But what happens next is after he says this, the mother of Jesus, she just tells the servants to do whatever he says. So we obviously see some kind of assumption going on here. And this is the last thing I'll say about it, is that if it was such a real sharp rebuke, then why would Mary go ahead and tell the servants to do what he says, making the assumption that he's going to do something? So the context of what Mary says could be explaining a little bit about how Jesus answered Mary to her I guess her discovery of not having any wine. So to reveal a little bit on this, and I know I took a whole lot of time, but a lot of people are concerned about this and they wonder, why would Jesus talk so harshly to his mother? But the fact is that maybe it wasn't harsh. Maybe she was just saying, hey, there's no wine. And Jesus was saying, well, this really doesn't have anything to do with us, or let's not even worry about it, because Mary knew that he was going to take care of it. It could also mean that the rebuke that he gave her, a little rebuke, he's like, that didn't have anything to do with me because my hour has not yet come. Well, Mary is persistent. And so her faith is what not allowed, but was what prompted Jesus to go ahead and make this happen, even though it is the will of the Father, because he would not have done it if it wasn't the will of the Father. And so it was just a more of a persistence in her faith in her son. And then Jesus does this miracle. Either way it be, it is a testimony to a picture of who Mary is in the scriptures. We see her as the mother of Jesus. And one more thing I may say is that in regards to relationships, it is that Mary, the mother, finds her identity in Jesus. We find our identities in Jesus. It's the mother of Jesus. And so after that, we get Jesus telling these servants to fill up these barrels, man, and it's a bunch too. So the 6 stone jars, I think they hold maybe 120 gallons, 120, 130 gallons of water. And John makes the statement that these are for the purification. And this is going to be important because we're going to explain it a little bit later. But just think the amount. This is not an easy task to fill up 130 gallons of water from a cistern or something in the back that they have to draw the water out and put it in. So this is a major task. It's an undertaking. And then he says, once they filled it up, he says, take the water and present it to the head servant. And the head servant goes, or the party master, or the wedding planner, he says, take it to that person and let him taste it. And he tastes it, and it says that the water had turned to wine. And then as that water had turned to wine, he was like, where'd it come from? And nobody knew except for the servants, obviously, that Jesus was the one who did it. Nobody knew about this. And so he goes and he talks to the husband, the bridegroom, and he says, man, this is the good wine. Usually people put the good wine out first, and then after everybody's drunk, then they put out the bad wine. But you've saved the good wine for last. And so it's crazy because, first off, we've got these servants who the disciples have come back and have left the scene. And so I think that these servants, for John, as he's writing these scriptures, as he's writing this narrative, he wants us to see them as the disciples in a way, because they are carrying out the duty of what Jesus has asked them to do. So what Jesus is saying do, they are following it. And that's why I make this assumption, is because they're following what Jesus tells them to do. And so as Jesus tells them to do these things, this miracle occurs. But what I want us to understand is that, man, the miracle occurs in the hands of the servants. This is powerful because it is not Jesus who is actually doing the miracle. Of course, he's the one that causes the miracle to occur because he is God. But the ones who actually make the moves, the one who are actually doing the do, it is the servants. They're the ones that fill the water. They're the ones that bring it to the headmaster, the wedding planner. That's a powerful statement itself, is that Jesus does his work through his servants. He does it through us. And then we see kind of a parallel as well, because how we've replaced the disciples with the servants. The one who gets the praise and the glory, who is that? It isn't Jesus. It's actually the husband. It is the bridegroom, because the headmaster, the head waiter, the wedding planner says, man, you kept the good wine for last, bro. This the good stuff right here. Because he didn't know where it came from. And so what we see is that the praise goes to the bridegroom. And one thing that people kind of make a metaphor out of, or uh, they kind of make a allegory out of this story, is that this is a picture of the divine wedding between Jesus and his bride, the church. And that we're going to have that wedding supper in heaven and celebrate for all eternity. And who will get the glory? Jesus, the bridegroom, the husband, will get all of the glory. It's a beautiful thing. And so after that, it says that this is the first of the signs that Jesus does. It says it's the beginning of the signs that Jesus does. And it says that he displayed his glory, that he made known or revealed his glory. And the disciples believed. So it's important here that we realize that this miracle was done for a specific purpose. And it's crazy because it's a sign, which is what John uses oftentimes, well, most of the time, except he uses works sometimes, but he doesn't use miracle. He uses signs and works. And so when he talks about these signs, what a sign does is not just do something. It's not just a miracle for a miracle's sake, but it is a miracle that points to something. It's a miracle that reveals or testifies to something. And so these are called signs because what Jesus does in this turning water into wine is he points it and directs it to letting his disciples know that what he said earlier, what greater things you will see. You'll see the angels descending and ascending upon the Son of Man. He says, this is where it starts right here. You are beginning to see this glory, this wonder of who God is. And see, that's why it says that the disciples believed. It's not because they looked at the sign and wondered at it, marveled at it, but they saw the sign and they recognized that the things that they thought about Jesus, about him being the King of Israel, the Messiah, the one in whom the scriptures were written about, that it is him. That sign that they recognized and saw, they believed in Jesus after that because it pointed to him. And when I said it's kind of ironic that this is a sign because nobody else knew that the miracle happened. Everybody else was oblivious of these things. But see, Jesus did it for a purpose. It was revealed to those who were to be children of God, his disciples. Man, that was a lot. That's a lot. But we got to rush through here and talk about the three things. How God is shown in this, what's it talking about, man, and then how we can apply these truths. So what is this speaking about God? Well, first it speaks that Jesus does the will of the Father, that there's nothing that he does unless it is by design under the guidance of Father. That's what he does. Jesus just mirrors, shows, represents, displays the glory of God by doing exactly as God would do, act, think, say. We also see that the things that he does reveals his glory. So when we are doing things in our life or things happen in other lives, it's so that God's glory can be revealed so that we can believe in him and trust in him. And so the things that he does reveal his nature, his character, who he is, his glory. What's this say about man? Well, it says that, first off, like I said earlier about this whole thing that I was talking about, is God uses us. We are his instruments to carry out his will on this earth. That's a powerful thing, man. Don't take that lightly, that we get to be the instruments and tools for God making this world a better place. And then second, don't get stuck on the sign. Don't get stuck on the miracles, but see how they are pointing to Jesus. See how they reveal the character of God. See how you can know, understand, and love the Lord more because of what is happening or occurring. So how do we apply these truths to our lives? Well, let's take a look at our life and see what's going on and how God is moving. Once we see how God is moving, man, let's bring glory to his name. See how it reveals his character so that we can trust in him more and know him more. See how he is doing something so that we can recognize something about him. So take a look at your life and see that. And then finally, man, be an instrument. Paul says, be instruments of righteousness and not present yourselves as instruments of righteousness. So let's do that, man. Let's allow God to move through us. Let's allow God to do some amazing things in our lives and the lives of others so that we can see the signs that will bring glory to Jesus. Hey, I appreciate you guys for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.